This might be the most important offseason in the history of the Chicago Bears, and it's time for my 2024 mock offseason, where I'll be going through cuts, trades, free agency, the draft, extensions, franchise tagging, every single possible thing Ryan Poles could be doing this offseason. I'll be simulating in this video right here. So sit back, relax, get a drink, get a snack, because this is going to be a very long video with a lot of content in it, and I hope you guys are ready for it. What's going on, guys? I'm back with another Chicago Bears offseason update video, offseason discussion video, which I'll be doing pretty frequently throughout this offseason, talking about the future of the Bears and reacting to offseason moves, obviously. But right now, we are in full speculation mode because the new league year is only 3 weeks away at this point, and there are so many different things that Ryan Poles could be doing this offseason. And like I mentioned, guys, this very well could be the most important offseason in the history of the Chicago Bears for many different reasons, okay? First of all, we had the #1 overall pick in the draft yet again. We got lucky enough to get that from the Carolina Panthers, and this time around, the Bears could maybe be deciding to use that pick on a quarterback, but if they don't, they could be getting the biggest haul in NFL history if they do trade back because of how talented of a prospect Caleb Williams is, you know, at the top of this draft, and even Drake May as well. So the opportunities this offseason are even crazier than they were last offseason because of how talented the draft class is at the top. And the Bears also have another first round pick number 9. They have a lot of cap space as well. Again, they recently cut Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair before I even made this video. So Bears have a lot of money to spend again, okay? The third highest cap space in the NFL currently. So Ryan Poles, man, he has a chance to really change his franchise for a very, very long time, for better or for worse, from his quarterback decision, from his other decisions on this roster in free agency and through the draft. And I feel like in 5 or 6 years, we're going to be looking back during this offseason, at this offseason, and either, you know, crying about what could have been, or really praising Ryan Poles, who hopefully is still the GM by then, on what a good job he did turning around this Bears franchise. And there's so many different ways to go about it, so I'm so excited to get into this video. So as I mentioned, I'll be going through every single part of this offseason and give you guys predictions for what I think Ryan Poles is actually going to do. Now he's in year 3 as GM, so we've had a couple years to look back and see how he operates, what types of players he likes, what types of players he doesn't like, what he usually does, his tendencies. Like, we kind of know that at this point in time, so I'm using that prior history to, you know, really come up with my predictions for this year. And obviously, you know, I'm not going to get everything right. A lot of this is going to be completely wrong, but look more at what positions I addressed, what types of players I addressed, more than the actual name, because I feel like the stuff I address in this video could very well be what Ryan Poles addresses in real life, even if it's not the exact name that I'm picking in this video. And also, shout out to Quentin Crisco of On Tap Sports Now for creating a fantastic spreadsheet, which I used to, you know, help me with the math behind this offseason, because he actually made a spreadsheet where you can just input, you know, who you want to sign, who you want to cut, trade, etc. And it does all the math related to the salary cap for you, which is very, very helpful. So that's linked down below in the description box if you want to play with that yourself. And also shout out to Brad Spielberger of PFF for coming up with all the contract projections that I'm using in this video, because I've used that the past couple years and they have been very, very accurate, very, very close on their predictions. Brad has been, so I'm using his predictions again, because it would be impossible for me to come up with that stuff all by myself. So with all that being said, guys, let's get into it, okay? So before the offseason begins, we have $45,286,157 to spend, but let's do cuts first of all, okay? Who am I going to be cutting from this roster? All right, so the first player I'll be cutting, which already happened actually in real life, Ryan Poles beat me to it, is cutting safety Eddie Jackson. Cutting him saved the Bears about $12.56 million in cap space. As much as I loved Eddie Jackson, it made total sense to cut him right now because he was getting on the wrong side of 30. His level of play was declining. He was a big cap hit for this year as well, so it did make sense to start fresh with a younger, cheaper option at safety. The second cut then, which again already happened, was cutting center Cody Whitehair. Cutting him saved the Bears about $9.15 million, and they cut him for many of the same reasons why they cut Eddie Jackson. He was getting on the wrong side of 30. His level of play declined pretty significantly as of late. He got benched down the stretch last year, so I think everybody expected Cody Whitehair's time in Chicago to be over, and Ryan Poles agreed with that, so we are starting over at center as well. A somewhat unexpected cut I have the Bears making is cutting punter Trenton Gill. Cutting him saves the Bears about $965,000, and obviously I know that Trenton Gill was a recent draft pick of Ryan Poles in the 7th round in 2022, but the level of commitment to a 7th round pick is not that high. They get cut pretty frequently in the NFL, and Trenton Gill simply has not been a good punter so far in the NFL. Last year, he ranked among the bottom 10 in most punting categories, including average yards per punt. The amount of times he pinned the opponent inside the 20-yard line was not nearly as high as other punters in the NFL because he lacks the leg and the accuracy to be a top punter in the NFL. And yes, you may say, who cares about the punter? Well, in a close game, punting can matter, and good punting can win or lose you some pretty close football games. So I think the Bears should look to upgrade from Trenton Gill. Now, these following cuts I'm listing will not be official until after preseason is almost over, because you're allowed to have a 90-man roster and you don't make cuts unless you absolutely have to until the very end usually. So a lot of these guys are like back of the roster practice squad guys, which, you know, some of these guys would be going to the practice squad, which I'm cutting right now for simplicity's sake, but in real life, these cuts will not be happening until later in the offseason. And these players are cornerback Quindell Johnson, interior defensive lineman Michael Dwumfor, linebacker Daniel Hardy, long snapper Cameron Lyons, offensive guard Bill Murray, which, what the heck, we have a Bill Murray on the team? Offensive guard Jerome Carvin, offensive tackle Aviante Collins, offensive tackle Roy Mabiteka, punter Corliss Waitman, running back Travis Homer, safety Douglas Coleman III, and receiver Nasimba Webster will all be cut. So after cuts, we have about $80 million in cap space remaining, which is actually a lot of money. It's significantly higher than the $45 million that we started out with, just because, you know, obviously Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair have pretty significant cap hits, so it made sense to cut both of them. And now it's time to decide on a franchise tag. Okay, who am I going to be franchise tagging? If anybody, let's get into it. The player I'll be franchise tagging is cornerback Jalen Johnson. The franchise tag this year for cornerbacks costs $18.8 million against the cap, and that's going to be fully on the books this year. You can't spread that out over time. And even though I would love to come to terms on a long-term extension with Jalen Johnson, I do not think that's going to happen, simply because Ryan Poles probably wants to see him replicate what he did in 2023 again before making him the highest paid cornerback in football. It does seem like Jalen Johnson, according to reports, wants to be the highest paid corner in football, and I think that Ryan Poles, being a pure businessman, he's not going to make Jalen Johnson the highest paid corner unless he sees him do what he did in 2023 again and stay fully healthy on top of that. Even though it's pretty unfair to not reward Jalen Johnson with a long-term extension, that's just the business of the NFL, and Jalen Johnson has already said that he would be okay with playing on the franchise tag because, in his own words, he said that money is money. Now, you know, obviously extending him would be a lot better of a scenario, but unfortunately I do think the Bears will end up franchise tagging Jalen Johnson. After tagging Jalen Johnson, we have about $61 million remaining in cap space, and now let's talk about the players I'll be re-signing on this Bears team. Okay, which Bears from last year that are currently free agents I'm going to be bringing back on the roster before free agency begins. The only Bear I'm re-signing is long snapper Patrick Skills to a 1-year, about $1.5 million contract. I think that long snapper is a position where it really does not matter as much who you have there as long as he does the job. And Patrick Skills definitely does do the job. He already has, you know, experience working with the Bears. He's the longest tenured Bear on the roster right now. So why not bring him back for another year? He's clearly doing his job well, and you know, everybody does love him as well. After re-signing Patrick Skills, we have about $59.5 million remaining in cap space. And talking about some guys I did not re-sign. So Darnell Mooney, I let walk just because I feel like his time in Chicago clearly seemed like it was over. In the second half of last year, it seemed like he did not really want to be here in Chicago anymore. He really regressed as a receiver the last couple of years here. So I think Mooney is probably going to start fresh somewhere else. I also let Justin Jones walk because he's not a difference maker at defensive tackle. He's okay at the very best, but I think the Bears should be looking to, you know, really get some difference makers here on the defensive line. And they also let Yannick Ngakoue walk as well because he suffered an injury last year and he really was not as productive as he should have been given the money we paid him last year. So only bringing back one Bear that was a free agent. And now let's talk about free agency. Okay, we have about $60 million to spend, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you take into account the fact that you have to sign your rookie class and we're going to be having multiple first round picks, this money goes away pretty fast. So we still have to be wise with this money and only target positions that we actually need, try to still get good value at certain spots, and try to really, you know, get guys that fit the long-term vision of this team as well. Ryan Poles does not just needlessly hand away money, you know, without thinking about it. He usually is pretty thoughtful about the money that he does hand out. So I'll be trying to do the same and be thoughtful handing out these contracts. But let's begin. My first big free agency splash is signing defensive tackle Justin Madubuike of the Ravens to a 4-year contract worth $92 million with $60 million guaranteed and a first-year cap hit of $11.25 million. Justin Madubuike broke out last year in a big way. He was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. He was a big part of why the entire Ravens unit was the #1 defense in football. They had a great defensive line that enabled the linebackers in the secondary to have more success than they would have without a guy like Justin Madubuike. And he made the Pro Bowl last year. He also made the All-Pro second team. He had 13 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 33 QB hits, 64 total pressures. This guy was a menace on the inside rushing the passer, and he showed relentless pursuit, dominant athleticism, really high energy at all times, was a great run defender too, which I know that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are going to value, a guy that's pretty good at both rushing the passer and playing against the run. And in this Eberflus scheme, guys, getting a dominant interior pass rusher honestly is more important than getting a dominant edge. Okay, I know a lot of Bears fans would want the Bears to get that premium edge instead on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, but we already have a great pass rusher in Montez Sweat at edge, and I think that getting a true superstar on the inside at defensive tackle, 3 technique, would benefit this defense even a lot more than an edge rusher would, because if you look at Eberflus's time in Indianapolis, he had a dominant pass rusher on the inside in a DeForest Buckner that completely changed that defense. He was the centerpiece of that defensive line. And I think that this could be a same situation where, a young guy in Justin Madubuike is only 26 years old, broke out last year, still getting better and better. He could be the perfect fit the Bears are looking for at 3 technique. And Justin Madubuike with Andrew Billings, with Gervon Dexter, with Zach Pickens could be a nasty rotation at interior defensive line. Next, I'll be signing receiver Curtis Samuel to a 2-year deal worth $18 million total with the first-year cap hit of $6.48 million. Ryan Poles said he wants to acquire explosive and athletic football players, and Curtis Samuel fits the bill perfectly. He's one of the fastest guys in the NFL, a very explosive yak machine. He can make guys miss in the open field. He can juke guys out of his shoes. He can shake people off. He can fly past people after the catch because of how fast and athletic he is. And he was a former teammate of DJ Moore, as you guys can see in this picture right here, during their time with the Carolina Panthers. So that would be a pretty fun storyline too, to add a receiver to this room that already has experience working with DJ Moore in the past. And I just think that in Shane Waldron's new offense, he's going to really value guys that are explosive, because Shane Waldron's offense passed the ball deep at one of the highest rates in football, and they had one of the most explosive offenses in football too in Seattle during the last 3 years. So I think that getting a guy in here to play the slot in a Curtis Samuel, who's still pretty young, only 27 years old, coming off a pretty fantastic season with the Commanders in which he had 613 yards and 4 touchdowns last year, I think this would make a lot of sense for the Bears to upgrade their receiver room. I'm going to be stealing from the Ravens defense again, signing safety Geno Stone to a 2-year contract worth $13 million with the first-year cap hit of $5.85 million. Geno Stone had 7 interceptions in 2023, an absolutely absurd number. He is a ball hawk. He knows how to make the ball go the other way. Obviously, a great defensive line in Baltimore did help him out in being in position to make those interceptions, but the Bears also are building a great defensive line now. So I think that he could be a great fit in this defense, playing next to other turnover-forcing defensive backs like Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson. Like, all of these guys know how to make the ball go the other way. It's something that Eberflus really does value from his hits principles. So I think that Eberflus would fall in love with a guy like this that was really good in coverage last year. He had the highest coverage grade of his career, was really good in coverage last year, one of the best coverage safeties in football, playing in those 3 safety sets that the Ravens often ran there. So he was playing next to a lot of other talented players, which definitely did help his own stats out. But again, on the Chicago Bears, he will also be playing next to other talented football players. And I think that getting a guy in here that already knows what it takes to be a safety in a really good defense, an elite defense, he's only 24 years old, he still has a lot of room to grow. This would be a great signing for the Chicago Bears defense. Next, I'll be signing a center, Evan Brown from the Seahawks, who has familiarity in Shane Waldron's scheme. I'm signing him to a 3-year contract worth $13.5 million with a first-year cap hit of $2.88 million. And this is basically the Lucas Patrick replacement on this team, a guy that already knows the scheme well, a guy that knows the play caller. He can start if need be. He's not a great starter though. Don't expect great play out of him, which I know Bears fans won't like to hear that, because we want stars everywhere, but that's just not the reality of the NFL. I'm planning on addressing center more in the NFL draft because I think there's a lot of centers that Ryan Poles would love in the draft. But Evan Brown could still be a quality depth signing. He's appeared in 40 games in the NFL. He's played both guard and center. He's a very athletic guy that fits the scheme very, very well. So if the Bears do have injuries at center or guard, he can plug and play immediately. And you have to have signings like this, which do build depth for your offensive line because injuries are pretty common. But going to the next signing then, another former Seahawk, another former player that worked with Shane Waldron. It's tight end Colby Parkinson. I'm signing him to a 1-year contract worth $2.45 million. The Bears need a tight end too behind Cole Kmet. We don't really have one on the roster right now under contract. I don't want Robert Tonyan back. He was not really that good last year. Mercedes Lewis is like 55, 60 years old at this point. So I think it would make sense for the Bears to go in a younger direction at tight end too and get a guy that already knows the scheme well. He's 25 years old. He's 6'7", weighs 251 pounds. So a very tall, very big guy that as a pass catching tight end too, I think he could work in the NFL. Like he already had 247 yards last year as a tight end too on the offense of Seattle. Nothing too crazy, obviously, but the year prior he had 322 yards and made some fantastic highlight reel catches. And being on the Seattle offense that already had so many other weapons to throw to, like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant, and last year JSN as well, it was pretty hard for him to get involved as a pass catcher. And even on the Bears, like he's not going to be one of the primary pass catchers, but as a tight end too, you can do a lot worse than this guy. I would have loved to sign Noah Fant, but unfortunately he's going to be out of the Bears price range because he had a very good season last year, and I don't think the Bears can afford to pay both of their tight ends big time money. I'm also going to be signing a punter, Corey Bojorquez from the Cleveland Browns, to a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million. You can say that's pricey for a punter, but it's not too crazy. I mean, veteran punters do get paid around this much, and he was one of the better punters in the NFL last year, top 10 in virtually every punting category, including average yards per punt, total punting yards, the amount of times he pinned opponents inside the 20, he did that 31 times. He also had a long of 73 last year, so a pretty decent leg on him. And I just want a punter that I'm not going to be scared about giving the Bears bad field position. It seems like Corey Bojorquez knows what he is doing. He's a veteran. He's been in the NFL for some time now, so I think this would be a pretty good signing for the Bears to replace Trenton Gill. I want to get some more depth at offensive tackle. I'm signing Cameron Irving to a 1-year contract worth $2 million. Cameron Irving is a veteran. He is pretty old, 31 years old, but he's played all over the offensive line. Last year, he played mostly right tackle. For the Cleveland Browns as a backup, he played pretty well for them last year in terms of pass protection, and he's played left tackle as well in the past, so he has experience on both sides of the offensive line. And I think that he would be a good addition to have on this offensive line. From a scheme and depth point of view, he's very athletic. He can move around, so he would be a good fit in the scheme, and he already has experience in the NFL beforehand, so he would be good quality depth. And lastly, I will be signing edge rusher Romeo Okwara to a 1-year contract worth $2 million. Romeo Okwara did struggle with injuries as of late the last couple of years, and last year he did not really get the chance to do much on the field. But before his injuries in 2020, he had a 10-sack season. I know that was a long time ago, but if the Bears think he's healthy, he could be a fantastic rotational edge rusher, and maybe if he gets to even half of what he was before the injury, he could turn out to be a good value signing by Ryan Poles. And he already knows the division pretty well, obviously, because he was playing on the Lions beforehand. He was on the Lions since 2018. So getting a guy that already knows the NFC North pretty well, a guy that was pretty productive before his injuries, if he is healthy now, I think this would be a good low risk, high reward signing by Ryan Poles. So after free agency, we have about $24 million left in cap space, which we're going to need to sign our rookie class because we have multiple first-round picks, and those first-round players do command a good amount of cap space, even though they are on a rookie contract. So I'm not going to be spending any further. I think I was pretty wise with my spending, only tried to target positions that we actually need. Got some value signings in there as well at the end, which, on 1-year deals, like they're fine to have here for next year while we try to get replacements for the long term through the NFL draft eventually, to build more depth. But yeah, that was free agency. And now let's talk about trades. Okay, what player or what draft pick will I be trading before the NFL draft begins? And obviously the choices are either trading Justin Fields or trading the number 1 overall pick. I don't think they're going to keep Fields and keep the number 1 overall pick. One of them has to go, and I'll be making my decision right here, and it's going to be based on what I think Ryan Poles is actually going to do. I have the Bears trading quarterback Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a first-round pick number 20. In exchange, they also will be giving up a fourth-round pick number 110. And I know what some people will be saying. How could you possibly get a first-round pick for Justin Fields? Well, a lot of people around the NFL seem to think that it is a possibility. Okay, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and some other NFL reporters have said that this could go as high as a first-round pick. And I think it's certainly possible when you take into account how quarterback desperate some of these teams actually become, especially a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers that at pick number 20, they have no chance at getting any of the top quarterbacks in the draft this year. So taking a chance on a very high upside athletic quarterback that is still pretty young. He's still only 24 years old. He was done dirty by his previous team, the Chicago Bears, who started a full-blown rebuild in year 2 for him and gave him terrible coaches. I think this would make sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers with where they are as a franchise right now. Okay, I don't think that Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph are the quarterbacks of the future. So I think they would love to have a quarterback like Justin Fields in the building. And reportedly, Mike Tomlin is a big fan of Justin Fields. And they also hired offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, who runs a pretty run-heavy offense, which could fit Justin Fields pretty well. And from the Bears' point of view, I already made a long video breaking this decision down, which if you want to watch that, it's a video, 2 videos before this one, where I go into more detail about why I think the Bears make this decision. But to put it short, I think that the business of the NFL is why Ryan Poles will be moving on from Justin Fields. It's too risky for him to pass up on a quarterback again, pass up on a rookie contract for a quarterback again, when last year he did that with CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud turned out to be a star. Now, I think going back in time, nobody thought that was going to happen. I think that's still, trading the pick last year, the number 1 pick, was a right move at the time because he had to give Fields another year with an actual number 1 receiver, which he did. And even though the situation was not great last year still, besides for having DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, I think that Ryan Poles did not see the consistency out of Fields last year that he was hoping to see out of him. And starting over with a very, very talented quarterback in Caleb Williams is just too tempting for any GM, I feel like. And he might think that Caleb Williams is a better overall prospect even than Justin Fields was coming out of college, in which case he definitely is going to start over and choose his own guy to build around. We're getting so many reports around the NFL from trusted sources that Ryan Poles is indeed going to trade Justin Fields and draft Caleb Williams, where at this point I do expect that's going to happen, and that's going to be happening in my mock offseason obviously as well. And I do have the Bears giving up a 4th-round pick as well in this trade, which I think is fair if we are getting a first-round pick for Justin Fields. I think getting a first-round pick would be a lot, and the only reason why we're getting this first-round pick is because we also traded that 4th-rounder, and also because Justin Fields showed fantastic promise down the stretch of last season, and because he's also pretty young. So I think sadly the Justin Fields era in Chicago is over, and I have him going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. After trading Fields, which still hurts my heart to say that, I still wish we could make it work here in Chicago, but after trading him, which is probably what's going to happen, the Bears have $27,336,000 to spend in cap space because they gained a couple million from trading Fields since he had that cap hit next year, which is not totally on our books anymore. Now, getting pick number 20 back is going to be a bigger cap hit to pay that draft pick than pick number 110 would have been, the 4th-round pick, so we do have to take that into account, but we do have enough money, to sign our entire rookie class now. And let's get into the NFL draft. Okay, Ryan Poles' favorite part of the year, my favorite part of the year as well. Who are the Bears going to be targeting with all these picks that they have? And taking a look at our draft picks, we have a lot of high-value premium selections. We have 3 picks in the top 20, 3 first-round picks. That would be absolutely insane. We have a 3rd-round pick number 75, and a 4th and a 5th. Now, there is a gap in between pick number 20 and pick number 75, which maybe Ryan Poles would want to trade back and get a pick there. I think that's certainly possible. Also, we don't have a 6th or 7th round pick because of previous trades that we made. So maybe Ryan Poles would want to acquire more picks here still. But I think having all these picks is still fantastic draft capital, especially having 3 first-round picks in a draft class this talented. But with all that being said, let's begin with the mock draft. With the first pick in the draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting quarterback Caleb Williams out of USC. I think that the only reason why we're even discussing moving on from Fields is because we have the number 1 pick, and a quarterback as special as Caleb Williams is available. He will be tasked with ending the Bears' longtime endless curse at the quarterback spot, and he is an absolutely insane talent. Okay, one of the best quarterback prospects I've seen in recent memory, and I know that he does have his flaws. He's not a perfect prospect. He will need to be coached up and developed in the NFL, but the potential is way too high, I feel like, to pass up on a guy like this that was one of the most productive passers in all of college football the last 2 seasons, won a Heisman Trophy in 2022, and I just think he's a perfect quarterback for today's NFL. In today's NFL, you need a quarterback that can play out of structure, that can create on his own, that can move around and be mobile, but also a guy that is willing to play in the pocket when he can. And Caleb Williams has a special ability to do both. I know he played a lot out of structure in college, but that was partly out of necessity because of how bad the offensive line was at times and how bad the route concepts were at times on film, especially last year. So definitely had to run around and make crazy things happen, which he did oftentimes. That's where a lot of his highlights come from, where he's just, creating something out of nothing. And that is going to be why he's so special, but he does have the ability to also play in the pocket, sense pressure, be accurate to all parts of the football field, get the ball out quickly. I know his time to throw was pretty long in college football because of the long extending plays, which he had to do when the play broke down, but there are many examples on film of him playing in structure in a rhythm and timing based play, which there's going to be a lot of those in the NFL. You can't only create out of structure. You have to be special from the pocket as well. And I think that Caleb Williams definitely has a chance to be special from the pocket as well in the NFL. And his abilities as a runner are also very underrated. Okay, this guy can actually move, juke people in the open field, and run the ball down the football field if he has to as well. He's not as fast, obviously, as Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson, but he's definitely good to great as a runner, which is good enough at the quarterback spot. You don't have to be elite at running, but he is very, very good at running the football as well. So all in all, I think that Caleb Williams has everything you want in a quarterback prospect. He can throw the ball very well. He can create out of structure. He can play in the pocket as well. He can run the ball as well. And there are going to be questions that have to be answered about his maturity and his leadership, because playing quarterback in a city like Chicago is really damn difficult, as all of our previous quarterbacks can attest to. But if he does have what it takes mentally, I do think he is going to be the pick at number 1 for the Bears and have the chance to lead the Chicago Bears to the glory land. At pick number 9, I'm giving our newly drafted quarterback a fantastic weapon in Rome Odunze, receiver out of Washington. Rome Odunze could be a true number 1 receiver at the NFL level, and to get him as the receiver number 2 on this offense would be absolutely game breaking. Rome Odunze is 6'3", weighs 200 pounds, but he plays a lot bigger than he actually is. He led all of college football in contested catches last year with 21, so he's a guy that can go up there and get a jump ball, which the Bears badly need that on their offense in 2024. Chase Claypool was supposed to be that guy, but unfortunately he fizzled out, and even though Odunze is not as big as a Chase Claypool, he plays a lot bigger than a Chase Claypool does, because he actually goes up and snatches the ball out of the air. So he could be that X receiver on the outside that can go down the field and win a contested catch when his quarterback is in trouble. And he can run any route in the book. He played in a very NFL style offense in Washington where they passed the ball at a very, very high rate. So he had to run a lot of different routes, and he succeeded at running those different routes because he has great body control, great awareness. He's a very smart football player. And even though he's not the most explosive guy, he does not have elite top end long speed. He has good enough speed, good enough athleticism, and with how smart of a guy he is and how savvy he is as a route runner, I think he really is going to succeed at the NFL level. He had 1,640 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns last year. The year prior, he also had 1,145 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So back-to-back really productive years. He's an all-around, really, really talented receiver prospect that could be receiver number 1 in this class if not for Marvin Harrison Jr. being a generational talent. But walking out of this draft with Rome Odunze would be a big, big win for the Bears offense. At pick number 20, it's time to address the biggest weakness on the Chicago Bears offensive line. I have them drafting Jackson Powers Johnson, center out of Oregon. Jackson Powers Johnson, in my opinion, is by far the best center prospect in this class, and he has the versatility to play guard if need be too, which I really do value those interior offensive linemen that can play both center and guard. And with how bad our centers have been here in Chicago the last couple of years, I really want them to get a true premium prospect like a Jackson Powers Johnson for their young quarterback, because having a bad center can ruin the development of a young quarterback, as Justin Fields knows. Okay, the snapping issues, the inability to have the opportunity to step up in the pocket with how bad the centers have been, it makes life really difficult on a young quarterback, and I don't want Caleb Williams to have to deal with the same things. And Jackson Powers-Johnson won the Remington Trophy in 2023 as the best center in college football, and he was truly dominant last year at the center spot. He has mauling ability. He's very, very athletic, very, very big and strong, 6'3", 320 pounds, and this is a guy that's very fundamentally sound. In terms of technique, he could be one of the better centers in the NFL very, very early in his NFL career, and I just think that all around he's one of the better offensive linemen even available in this class. And with how big of a need the Bears have at center, getting a versatile guy like this that impressed a lot of people at the Senior Bowl practices as well would be a big win for the Bears offense as well. With pick number 75, it's finally time to address the defense. I have the Bears selecting Adisa Isaac, edge rusher out of Penn State. Adisa Isaac is one of the more underrated players, I feel like, in this class, and with how long he is, first of all, pause, but with how long he is, Eberflus is going to absolutely fall in love with him because he likes the lengthier, bigger guys at the edge rusher spot. I mean, we got Montez Sweat on one side, on the other side, getting another freak athlete with long arms in Adisa Isaac, I think would be a very, very good addition to the Bears defense. And he had a fantastic year last year for Penn State. He had 7.5 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, playing on the other side of potential first-round pick Chop Robinson. He really did create a lot of opportunities for Chop Robinson to get sacks with how much pressure he was generating from his own side. And I think his motor is also a very, very important attribute of his because he plays at 100 at all times. I mean, he's one of the most energetic guys on the football field that's always giving his 100% effort, which I know, again, Eberflus and Poles are really going to value. And he will have to be developed, obviously, but I think a lot of his skills are very translatable to the NFL. And as a run defender, I think the Bears could like him as well because of how he plays against the run with his motors. So this would be a fantastic addition to the Bears defense. With pick number 122, I'm selecting another player from Oregon, Bucky Irving, running back. The Bears RB rotation right now lacks a player with true home run game-breaking speed. I love Khalil Herbert. I love Roschon Johnson. They're great all-around backs, but I think we do need a guy that can hit that home run, and Bucky Irving definitely is that guy. He's a very explosive, very fast guy. We'll see what he tests at the NFL Combine. I'm sure he's going to have pretty fantastic numbers, but his acceleration, his agility, his lateral juking ability, all of that is just very fantastic. And he kind of reminds me of a Tariq Cohen in some ways. He's pretty small, only 5'10", not as small as Tariq Cohen, obviously, but in terms of being that change of pace back like Tariq Cohen was to Jordan Howard, back in the day, I think Bucky Irving could be that and provide the Bears with a guy, that could take those outside zone runs to the house, and as a change of pace back would be a pretty fantastic back. He also has good receiving ability too. Had 413 receiving yards on 56 receptions on top of having 1,180 rushing yards as well. So a very versatile guy, very explosive guy that I'm sure Ryan Poles is going to love adding to this Bears offense. With pick number 146, I'm adding another receiver, Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. And yes, this is the brother of Christian McCaffrey, the son of Ed McCaffrey, and he has football in his DNA, obviously, and I think that he could be one of the steals of the draft later on when it's all said and done. This guy really loves contact. He loves to run into people. He loves to run through people in the open field, which I really value at the receiver spot, the physicality. He definitely is not afraid to get down and dirty, take a big hit. He's not scared of that contact, and the physicality also shows up in his contested catching ability. Rome Odunze was number 1 in contested catches last year, but Luke McCaffrey was tied for 2nd in the nation in contested catches with 17. Obviously, he went up against lesser competition at Rice, but I do think he can succeed at the NFL level as well because of how smart he is, how physical and tough he is. He's a great run blocker as well, which I'm sure Ryan Poles is going to value. He likes the receivers that can get down and block. And he also was a former quarterback, which I think is pretty cool because it gives him a further understanding of route concepts, route spacing, and just knowing what the quarterback is trying to look for when you are a receiver could make you a better receiver yourself. So Luke McCaffrey in the 5th round, I think would be a solid addition to the Chicago Bears receiving room. All right, so after signing a rookie class, we have about $8.5 million remaining in cap space, which the Bears are going to be taking into next season for emergency in-season signings, to sign their practice squad as well. Some of this money is going to be going towards that. So this gives the Bears enough wiggle room to maneuver next season comfortably. And that is it, okay? So let's look at the roster in totality, and I think this is a very good roster to put around a rookie quarterback. Definitely the best roster any Bears rookie quarterback has had in their entire history. So I got a really talented quarterback prospect in Caleb Williams. At running back, I added Bucky Irving as a home run, change of pace type of back. At receiver, I added multiple guys. Okay, Rome Odunze, Curtis Samuel, Luke McCaffrey. That should give the Bears a much higher floor and ceiling at the receiver spot for their new quarterback. At tight end, I did not get the chance to do too much, but I did add Colby Parkinson from the Seattle Seahawks that already knows Shane Waldron's offense. On the offensive line, I did add Jackson Powers-Johnson, a very high ceiling prospect at center that could make the Bears offensive line a lot better from day one. I also added better depth in Evan Brown and Cameron Irving. If you look on the defense, then I added a true star in Justin Madubuike that's going to give the Bears a nasty interior pass rush, pairing him up with Gervon Dexter. I also added Adiza Isaac on the defensive line at edge. Got Romeo Okwara as a depth option too. At linebacker, I did not do anything because our linebackers already are really damn good. And in the secondary also, I didn't do much at cornerback because our secondary, at least in terms of cornerbacks, was really good last year. And we already spent a lot of high draft picks on the secondary the last couple of years here in Chicago. But I did add Geno Stone at free safety to replace Eddie Jackson, who is a ball-hawking interception machine. And on the special teams, I did also add a better punter in Corey Bajorquez. So yeah, I really love the roster. I think that even with a rookie quarterback here next year, the Bears should be expected to compete and maybe not win the Super Bowl, obviously, but compete for a playoff spot. That number 7 NFC seed could be a possibility with a roster like this if Caleb Williams can be at least decent during his rookie year. And with a supporting cast like this, that is certainly possible. And I think this roster also gives the Bears a long-term contention window because we would have so much young talent on the roster after a draft like this. And taking into account the other 2 drafts before this that Ryan Poles already had, we would be building up a level of young talent that we have not ever seen before in Chicago. And next offseason, we would still have a lot of cap space because we would be having a rookie quarterback. Well, he wouldn't be a rookie anymore, but we would have a quarterback on the rookie deal, saving us a lot of money. So I truly think that Ryan Poles is going to go this direction. Go after his quarterback of the future, surround that quarterback with as much talent as he possibly can, and hope to compete during his first year. That's certainly possible because Ryan Poles, unlike other Bears GMs, actually put his quarterback of the future in a position to succeed during his rookie year, which again, it still sucks he could not do that for Justin Fields, but the roster was in such disarray when he first took over where I did understand rebuilding starting from scratch when he did, but it sucks that we had to screw over Justin Fields in the process. But I will always be a Fields fan, obviously. Like, I'll be rooting on Fields wherever he ends up, in this case Pittsburgh, but wherever he ends up, if it's not Chicago, he will have a fan in me still. But I think we have to get on the Caleb Williams train, and if he can turn into anything close to what his potential level actually is, we're going to be having a lot of fun here in Chicago very, very soon. Leave your comments down below. What would you guys do differently? What do you guys like about what I did in this mock draft? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you can to support the video because I put a lot of time into this. So I'd appreciate you guys leaving a like and a comment. But hope you guys enjoy the video. As always, bear down.